Well, folks, here we again for the weekly forecast. During this last week, of course, we've seen the warm temperatures during the Labor Day weekend, particularly Saturday and Sunday. Seen the development of thunderstorm activity across portions of east central Nebraska, primarily the Lincoln to Omaha metropolitan area, where we've seen heavy precipitation up to 5 inches fall in eastern Lincoln. And then, of course, we've seen redevelopment as we got into Monday night across southeast Nebraska, primarily impacting Saline, Thayer, and Gage County with heavy precipitation and significant hail. And then we've seen the reformation of thunderstorm activities. We had another cold front trying to work its way from the northern plains through the state on Wednesday and Thursday. Most of the thunderstorm activity in central Nebraska did leave some large hail and some localized heavy precipitation, and the reformation of that again on Thursday hit some of the same areas and then progressed eastward. Unfortunately, as you move toward the west of this region, we didn't see much in the way of any moisture of substantial proportions, and therefore there's been an upgrade in the drought monitor to abnormally dry conditions, expanding beyond the previous week to include a substantial portion of the panhandle southwest and south central Nebraska. So let's take a look at that latest drought monitor map, and you can see that we have seen this increase in dry conditions, and we would expect further increase depending on how the precipitation goes over this next 4 or 5 days. Most of it expected to be east of this region, so I would not be surprised if we'll see this upgraded toward most of the panhandle, and also seeing it starting to encroach in portions of western Kansas and eastern Colorado, as this dry signal has now been fairly well established for the last 4 to upwards of 8 weeks, depending on location within this area. Now, in terms of the pattern, we had this trough that brought the cold air into our region. It's now moved to the east of us, so we got a large north flow in eastern Nebraska. Very cool conditions expected, particularly as you're going to the game this evening. We expect to see temperatures dropping well into the lower 60s and possibly even the upper 50s before the end of the game. But we will see this break down rather rapidly. So as we go into tomorrow, we're going to see that trough lifting rapidly toward the northeast, and we're going to see more of a zonal flow. So that's going to bring some warmer temperatures into the western part of the state, just a slight bump up of temperatures in eastern Nebraska, but overall fairly dry conditions for this week. And the real activity starts to get in earnest as we get into Monday, as we start to see a storm system moving in the Pacific Northwest. That's slowly going to make its way toward the central plains. So in advance of it, there is some chances for some isolated thunderstorm activity along the front range of Colorado, and possibly even some nocturnal thunderstorm activity in extreme north, southeast, and east central Nebraska as we get into late Monday night and into early Tuesday morning. So as we get into the first day of Husker Harvest Days, we see this trough approaching. We're going to have a southwest flow at the surface, so we're going to see much warmer temperatures in our region. Really right now there's not pointing to any precipitation outside of an absolute extremely isolated event across southeast Nebraska. But as we get into Wednesday, this system starts to approach the northern plains, and we see some energy moving in through the bottom of this trough, primarily impacting the eastern half of the state. So from essentially Grand Island eastward, there's a robust chance for precipitation. West of there, more isolated. As we get into Thursday, we see that that trough tries to drop a little bit farther toward the south, but most of the energy remains to our north, so it looks like most of the precipitation will remain in eastern Nebraska. And as we get into Friday, that system drops even colder conditions in the northern plains and starts to work its way toward Iowa. So we would expect a significant cool down as we get into next weekend. As we look at the temperature forecast, we are remaining consistently in the upper 80s, so 90s across the western part of the state, cooling as we go through the week, particularly in the Thursday and Friday regime as we move down into the upper 70s and low 80s. In terms of the 8 to 14 day forecast, warm air moves to our east from Thursday through the following Tuesday. And in terms of precipitation, we've seen an increase of significant moisture across a substantial portion of the central United States.